Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me live today at Pulmonary Fibrosis News. It's so great to be here with you. So my name is Kim Fredrickson, and I'm happy to be here with you. I write a weekly column for Pulmonary Fibrosis News called Compassionate Help for the PF Journey. And I put the link for my column below. I write from a perspective of being a PF patient and a marriage and family therapist for 30 years. I also am an author, and I write about being compassionate with yourself through the ups and downs of life, which I think PF definitely qualifies for. Well, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my journey with PF so that you would understand that I get it. I understand. Well, for me, 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, the fastest growing kind that only 10% of people get. And after 9 months of treatment, which was a lumpectomy and chemotherapy and radiation, I was done and I was excited to get on with my life. And honestly, the treatment was grueling and much harder than I thought it would be. 4 days after I finished treatment, I noticed that I was having trouble taking a full breath. And I went straight to the doctor, and after 2 months of tests, it was determined that I had pulmonary fibrosis as a very rare side effect from the chemotherapy and the radiation for my treatment for cancer. And this only happens to 1 to 2% of people. And I would like to say officially that I do not like being special, okay? And I know that you don't like being special either, because all of us with pulmonary fibrosis, we have what's called a rare disease. And we're all special, but we don't want to be special. Hi there, Mary. Thank you for joining me. And there's some others here as well. Just like you, my life has been turned upside down by having this diagnosis. I've had to close my counseling practice of 30 years and face a terminal illness and all that goes with it. And I know that you get what I'm talking about. I know that you understand. I'm fortunate to be an author and be able to continue to write and blog from home, and I consider it a huge privilege to be able to write this column at Pulmonary Fibrosis News and interact with my fellow patients, as well as join you today on Facebook. Well, I thought today I would share a few comments with you about living with pulmonary fibrosis, and then I'd be happy to take any questions if I can help in any way. Well, yesterday I asked in a couple of online Facebook groups that I belong to what people would like me to talk about. And I got several great suggestions. I'm very thankful to those of you that responded. What I noticed was something very interesting, though. Most of them asked me to talk about medical questions, such as what treatment is most effective, or what type of medications to take, or what's the difference between IPF and PF. And I can touch on these briefly, but I can't answer from the perspective of being a doctor because I'm not. So I don't feel qualified to really give definitive answers. But what I noticed, and part of that maybe is from being a therapist that I notice patterns and trends. What I noticed is that there's kind of an underlying problem having PF that this brings up, which is PF is complicated and there are no easy answers. And there's a couple things I thought of. So first of all, pulmonary fibrosis is not just one disease. It's actually a family. It's a family, of more than 200 different diseases, lung diseases, and they all look very much alike. They have very similar symptoms. And the PF family of lung diseases falls into an even bigger category of a group of diseases called the interstitial lung diseases. Sometimes people talked about that as ILD as a short way of saying that. And that includes all the diseases that have inflammation or scarring in the lungs. Most people who say they have pulmonary fibrosis actually have what's called idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which honestly means that your doctor doesn't know what caused your scarring. Most people don't know why they have it. I actually do, because mine being from chemo and radiation, but most people don't know why. So first of all, it's a family of diseases. It's not just one disease. Second, PF patients are all different. Some patients, like as far as prognosis, some patients remain stable condition for long periods of time. Some people experience a rapid decline in symptoms, and others worsen slowly over time, just a little bit at a time. Some people have a longer prognosis, some have a shorter. And so because of that, treatment plans are individualized, and they're based upon our medical histories and other factors. So it's not one size fits all. We wish it was, because we want to know what to do. Okay, I was just looking at some comments. Thanks for some encouragement there. Third, there's medications available that may slow the progression of our disease. Which ones are appropriate depends on lots of things. What kind of lung disease you have, what caused your PF, if they know. Like I said, most people don't know. Whether you're stable or not, whether you have other significant diseases. So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. Also, supplemental oxygen really can helps us feel better. It helps us function better, because we're getting the oxygen that we need, that we're not able to get on our own, the amount. And it doesn't cure anything, but it helps. Like, I'm on 8 liters per minute right now. And having supplemental oxygen makes a huge difference. I wouldn't be able to do anything at all if I didn't have it. I'd just be laying in bed all the time. But the problem is that getting oxygen, securing it, getting it delivered, and knowing the different options and how to get insurance or providers to cover it can actually be a nightmare. I have story after story that I can tell you. Actually, I've told in some of my columns. And actually, I've written a lot of columns on the topic of oxygen. And I made 3 videos to share about what I've learned. Those are in the columns. And I'll, if you check that link I have at the top there of the main link to my columns, you can search in there for ones about oxygen if you need some help. And I shared all that because I had to learn the hard way. It was awful. And so, let's see. Ultimately, so I wanted to share so you didn't have to learn by the School of Hard Knocks the way that I did. Ultimately, the only real treatment is getting a lung transplant. So whether you're eligible for one is also highly individual as well. They look at our overall health, whether we're at ideal body weight. Do we have do we have to have other threatening life illnesses, like things that are also very serious at the same time? They look at how good is your support system. Do they think you'll be compliant with medications and exercise and things like that? And I personally have a whole nother caveat about getting on the lung transplant list, even though my disease has progressed to the point where I absolutely would be eligible to be evaluated, because my numbers are terrible. They won't even look at me for another 1.5 years, because if you've had cancer, you have to go cancer-free from the end of your treatment to be considered. So all this to say, no wonder we are so confused and unsure about so many things. And so while we share a common diagnosis with the same honestly awful result, we're different enough that there are no set answers to questions about which medications to take, what are the best treatment options, etc. Now, the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation has a great guide with lots of good information, and when the video's over, I will post that link in the comments below, because it has a lot of good answers to questions that everybody has. So, learning all of that, I don't mean to be a bummer, but to just say the reason that we have so much trouble dealing with our diagnosis, not just because it's such a hard one and it's awful dealing with a terminal illness. It's just terrible. But it's more than that. It's trying to figure out what care to get, what treatments to get, insurance. It's trying to figure out how to even get oxygen. I mean, it's pretty overwhelming at times. So knowing all of that, please first be compassionate with yourself about what you're going through and how hard this is, what we're all going through. Being diagnosed is with a terminal illness is beyond difficult, and then not being able to necessarily get absolute answers about prognosis and treatment is maddening. And when I was kind of preparing for today, I reflected on when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was horrible. And my best friend was battling the disease, and I saw what she went through. But honestly, there was comfort in knowing that there was a plan for treatment. I didn't have to fight to get anything I needed. It was not confusing. It was hard, but it was very different than this, where there's so much unknowns, and it's so hard to get answers at times. So first, be kind to yourself about how hard this is. Be nice to yourself and let yourself know, oh my gosh, this is really hard. In fact, maybe it's even harder than I thought. So I need to be really kind to myself. The second is having our questions answered is good. We deserve to have them answered. And honestly, before I go to my doctor's appointments, I write this long list of questions and I get as many answers as I can, because it helps me personally. I'm kind of a reality gal. Reality is really hard, but I'm a reality gal, which is having answers to questions, knowing what I'm dealing with, helps me adjust. It helps me grieve with whatever I've learned about, even though I don't like it. But not being able to get answers, having things in limbo is super hard, because we have so many questions about prognosis and treatment and oxygen and lung transplant possibilities, ways to cope, life expectancy. It goes on. And there's so many unknowns that cause us angst and fear and grief and confusion, honestly. And this is especially true when you're first diagnosed and then as your disease progresses. And the honest truth is that we need information, comfort, hope, courage, and we need the company of other people who understand what we're going through. And that's why I'm so glad that you're here, because everybody on this Facebook Live understands what I'm talking about. And this is true for patients and caregivers and loved ones alike. Sometimes we can get help and answers from our doctors, but sometimes we can't. And so my third thing I wanted to say was, it's so important to get support to deal with all of this. It's great that we're here together. And there's a lot of support on this page, this Facebook page of Pulmonary Fibrosis News, as well as their website. So we know what dealing with this is like. It helps to get support from other people who understand and really care. I have found pulmonary fibrosis patients to be very giving. Whenever anybody puts questions up or whatever, people answer, because they know what it's like to not know any answers. So there's a lot of unknowns that come with this scary diagnosis. So like I mentioned, there's lots of ways we can get support. One is our doctors, our loved ones. We can also get trustworthy information online, as well as being part of a support group. And that can be a great benefit as well. And it helps to talk with other people who understand what you're going through. They can meet in support groups, can meet in person, they can meet online. And they're a place to, ask your questions, learn skills to live with this disease. Find out what other patients' experiences are with different medications and oxygen use and all kinds of stuff. Vent about how hard it is to deal with this disease, and connect with other people that understand. And also to receive love and comfort and prayers when you're going through a hard time. So there's in-person groups, like I mentioned, and there's groups online. And you do have to be careful about what kind of information you get online, because it can be the blind leading the blind. So I did a column 2 weeks ago where I list a lot of reputable groups and websites that you can check out. And I will put a link in the comments below to that article, to that column, because there's a lot of really great information that you can find out so that you can get support. And I actually am an administrator, co-administrator of one of the online groups as well. So I hope it's been helpful to you. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about strategies for living with pulmonary fibrosis. So I'm going to take a minute here to try to look at some of these questions and see if I can answer them. Hang on a second here. because I'm sure that you have them. And actually start putting them up there if you would have any that you'd like me to try to answer. I'm looking over here on my computer so I can see them. I'm talking on my phone and the screen's really tiny. So, oh, good. Thank you so much for putting the link to that column. I really appreciate it. Yes, so I appreciate, Lizzie, thank you for your comment. It is helpful that we love input or advice, and this group is amazing. Oh, that's so good to hear. Thank you so much, Lizzie. It sure does help, doesn't it, to be able to talk with real people who deal with this disease on a daily basis. And it's really good. There's been quite a few people on here today that have been able to join us. So if you have any other questions you want to put up there, I'm sorry if I didn't see some of them that came up. It's hard to talk and also look at the questions. Otherwise, I get distracted. So if anybody else has any other questions that you'd want to say, you'll be able to, like I said, when I'm done with this, I will be putting up links to some other things that I think will give you some resources to find some extra help. And I would be happy to answer questions. I know actually that a lot of you that are going to watch this will actually be watching it not live, but watching it later. And that's what's so great about these Facebook Live videos, because they will just stay up here forever. And you can watch them whenever you want. People, I've had thousands and thousands of people watch these videos because, you know, people can't watch them now, but they can watch them later. And if you found that this video was helpful to you, please feel free to share this video once it's up with your friends, share it on your Facebook page or other social media, because the more that we can get good information out to other people, the better. Because we are not meant to do this alone. We're all in this together. And I'm grateful for sites like Pulmonary Fibrosis News that they dedicate themselves to, to help patients, to help us. So it's great to be here together. Well, hello, Ramirez from Texas. I used to live in Texas. I lived in Dallas for 4 years, and my son went to UT Austin. So let's see. So John asked me, am I able to be on Esprit? I am not. And the reason is that when it was initially brought out, it was only for people who have IPF. It was only approved for people that have idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. I have pulmonary fibrosis, which just means that they know why I got the disease. I got it from chemotherapy and radiation for cancer treatment. And so it was not approved for me, and I was not able to get on it. Honestly, at this point, I have declined so much that I'm not. It's approved for PF on a clinical trial, but what I've heard, and again, check it out, because this is just what I have heard. I'm not a doctor, but what I have heard is that if you're stable, they are happy to put you on it, or at least try to get in a clinical trial if you have PF. If you have IPF, you should be able to get on it if you're stable. Sadly, I am not stable right now. I've been declining a significant amount in the last 6 to 9 months. So unfortunately, I am not able to get on it. But I know that many people have found it helpful. There's another drug as well. I think it's OFEV. I can never remember which are the real names and which are the common names. But there's another one as well that many people are on that have found helpful. My understanding of it from talking to other patients is that for some people, the side effects are very difficult. And some people try it and stay on and figure out a way to deal with the side effects. Other people try it and decide they're too difficult or it doesn't help and they get off. I know somebody who was on one for 2 years, I think, and then it wasn't helpful, so then he got on the other one. So just talking to your doctor about it, I think, is very helpful. Let me see what you have to say. Oh, John, yay! You were on it until you got your lung transplant in January. Congratulations. You give hope to all of us that that's possible. So how is it going, John? If you can just answer back, if you don't mind. What a huge thing to go through. And it's so encouraging to know that we can do it and we can make it. Hello, Michelle. Thanks for joining me. That's always good to hear. And I have to say one other thing. I've been so impressed by people that have gotten lung transplants who are still very involved in the PF community. They're giving and they share. Another chance at life. Amen. So good to hear. And hi from Georgia. And I wish I spoke Spanish, but hello. Hola. That's the only thing I know. But it's so good. They're so giving. And people who've had lung transplants, a lot of them are on the sites. And they will still continue to contribute and answer questions of people. It's just, the PF community is so giving and loving. It's just amazing. I know people that have actually had loved ones die, and their caregivers are still very involved, giving and helping the rest of us. So it's a very, 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 very good community. And I'm so glad that you're a part of it, and I'm so glad that you're here with me. So I think I'm going to sign off unless there's something else. And then, again, those of you that are listening to this later, write your questions in, because what I really try to do, I consider it an incredible gift to be able to do these videos and to interact and to write the column that I write every week. It's like such a gift. It gives me purpose and meaning, and it helps me to give back, and it helps create some good out of such a tragedy. And so I really go out of my way to answer comments that I get on the columns. Sometimes I get 100 comments on the columns. It's crazy, but I love to answer them. And any comments that you make here on this video, I will do everything in my power to be able to answer those. Oh, sleeping problems. Okay. Wow. Will I do this again, Joan? I hope so. If they ask me, I will. As long as I can do it, I would be happy to do it. So PF News got on and asked me, oh, thank you. So they're posting the link to the site about the article about sleep problems that I posted actually I think it was yesterday it went up. And so I'd be happy to address that. So pulmonary fibrosis patients, like myself, have to deal with a lot of symptoms and hardships every day. As you know, all of you are like, yes, I know. Because our disease is so difficult. It's difficult to live with and deal with. Well, one of those difficulties for me and many PF patients is trouble sleeping. And so what I have learned, I did some research and also my own experience. And you have a good week too, Susan. Is that sleep problems come from a variety of sources. One of them is medication side effects. Some of the medications that we're on cause sleep problems. So I'm on Cellcept, which is also called mycophenolate something or other. I can't pronounce it. And that causes me difficulty going to sleep. I've heard that prednisone and Esprite, which is also called perfenadone, sorry, it's hard for me to say, those cause sleep problems. Coughing causes trouble sleeping. Not getting enough oxygen causes trouble. And that's because, number one, everyone alive, when they go to sleep, your breathing slows down. And so if you have PF, that's especially difficult. A lot of us have aches and pains or sleep apnea, and anxiety. There's a lot of reasons, excuse me, why we have sleep problems. And honestly, it's hard enough to get enough oxygen during the day, but it can be even harder at night. And at bedtime, I just long for a break from the fatigue, from the stress of dealing with oxygen all day. But unfortunately, it's often hard to get to sleep and stay asleep. And it's a big problem, not getting enough sleep, I think, for every person, but especially for people who have PF. And the reason is that when you don't get enough sleep, it contributes to even more fatigue, right? We're already tired, and we have a lowered quality of life. And we deal enough with those problems already. But when you don't get enough sleep, it's really hard for PF patients, and we're vulnerable to getting enough sleep. And so let me tell you why. I actually learned something. I knew experientially this was true, but I did some research, and I learned something, that there's a part of the sleep cycle that's extremely important called rapid eye movement, or REM. You often see it referred to as that. And REM is REM sleep, is the most rejuvenating part of your sleep cycle. It's the part that it consolidates our memories from the day and puts them into short-term memory and long-term memory. Some memories don't even get filed in our brain, and they just, go by the wayside. It's a time that your body rests. It's a time you get ready for the next day. Sleep's super, super important. And the best part of the sleep cycle, the most rejuvenating, is during REM sleep. But during REM sleep, our diaphragm, so there's two parts of us that breathe, make us breathe, okay? Our diaphragm, that's the big muscle underneath or near the lungs that makes you breathe. And then there's all of these tiny little muscles that are all up here in our chest that also, they're called accessory muscles. And so during REM sleep, the diaphragm has to do all the breathing, because during REM sleep, those little muscles are temporarily not functional. There's nothing wrong with them. That's just what happens in REM sleep. And so those without a lung disease, it's no problem when that happens. But it is problematic for us as patients, because our blood oxygen levels may go down a little bit more and cause us to wake up. Like our body will just wake us up because maybe we're not getting enough oxygen, and then it disrupts our REM sleep. So it's very significant, and I didn't realize that we were more susceptible to that. I just knew that it was hard to sleep. So the other thing is that not getting enough sleep can lower our immune system, which is very important for us. So I have been working very hard to improve my sleep. And so I wrote a column that was published yesterday, and I noticed that PF News put the link in there, which I really appreciate. And so here's some things that have helped me. And you'll notice when you go to the column that some other people, some comments that are left, people leave some other hints, which is so cool. So you're not just learning from me, you're learning from everybody else who leaves comments. So here's some things that have helped me, all right? And I have to tell you, when I was writing the list, I thought, oh my gosh, I am so high maintenance. And I'm not putting myself down. It's just like, man, it takes so much to make it happen. But the things I've done have helped. So the first thing is I take melatonin, which is it's a natural supplement. It's actually something that your body makes. But as you get older, you make less of it. And so because I have trouble falling asleep with Cellcept, I take it about 60 to 90 minutes before bed. And I also take one Tylenol PM with that. And that helps me fall asleep. I use a foam bed wedge. If you want to know see pictures of it, you can go online and just put in foam bed wedge. And what it does is it elevates your upper body. And many experts suggest either sleeping on your side or sleeping on your back with a foam wedge to raise your upper body. And they suggest that over pillows, because pillows are uneven and they move and they're lumpy. And I was using pillows before, but I would wake up with all these backaches. But now I've been doing the foam wedge and I don't have the backaches anymore. And it helps me because I'm able to breathe better. It opens up my airway a little bit more, and it helps. I also take a Epsom salt bath about an hour for bed. It helps me relax. It also reduces swelling in my legs. I have swelling in my legs. A lot of us do, often from medication or from sometimes our heart has to work extra hard, and so we have water retention in our body. And it's also a side effect from taking Cellcept. And so Epsom salts are absorbed through the skin, and they're also a natural anti-inflammatory agent. And that helps me. And then the last thing I do is I use what's called a cool mist humidifier. And I sleep with this humidifier near my head. And it helps soothe my dry nose, but it helps me sleep better. I think it opens up my airways more. Now here's the interesting thing. I've only heard one other person talk about this. For me, Warm humidity, like humidity in the air, or humidity in the air. I have a horrible time breathing with humidity. Humidity is awful for me. On humid days, I have a harder time. But the cool mist is different. It's not warm humidity put in the air. It's cool humidity. And I can actually sleep better with a cool humidifier. And I finally had a respiratory therapist. I asked like 5 different doctors, why is this? And they look at me like I'm crazy. Like, no. But it's true. I can tell the difference. My husband says I'm like a barometric pressure because I can always tell when it's humid by how I'm breathing. And he explained to me that warm humidity is very hard for people to breathe, but cool moisture in the air actually is helpful. I was like, wow, that's so helpful. And then in my column, I also talk about the 10-3-2-1 system that someone wrote about in a blog, and I reference it. And there's just these tips you can do before bed. So they recommend that 10 hours before bed, no caffeine. 3 hours before bed, no food or alcohol. 2 hours before bed, no more work, no more working on stuff. 1 hour before bed, no more screen time. Okay, that means phone, TV, computers, all of that. Both, I think, because it activates your brain and you're trying to slow things down, but also a certain kind of light that's emitted from screens can keep you awake. And then 0, they say the number of times you'll hit your snooze button in the morning. So I have to tell you, I don't do the snooze button one because I figure I need as much sleep as I can get. So I try to do all the other ones. And I will tell you that since I've been doing all of this, I have been sleeping better and feeling better. I had not been sleeping well for like years. And honestly, even before I got cancer or PF, once I hit menopause, my sleep got totally messed up. So I'm feeling more rested since I've been adopting these solutions. And okay, so here's the thing. All of us are different. These are just ideas, all right? This is not to tell you to go do this because just like I said earlier, everybody's different. Some things will help me, they won't help you. There's going to be other ideas that you have that either won't help me or I've never thought of and I want to try. So just try what sounds good to you. And do what works. Don't do what somebody else tells you about. Do what works. And also talk to your doctor about any sleep problems. A lot of times I think people don't even mention them. We just figure, we had other fish to fry when we talk to the doctor, but it's important to talk to your doctor about it because some studies have recommended that if you are sleeping terrible, you get a sleep study. Maybe you'd be able to improve your sleep if you find out a little bit more about what's going on. So those are my ideas that I shared in my column, and I try really hard on the column to just be real and share practical ideas in hopes of, one, connecting with everyone so that we all realize we're not alone. We all feel the same way. This is really hard, but there's things you can do. There's things you can do to improve your quality of life, even if it's like just being able to sleep a little bit better or to get support online or whatever. Figure out how to fight your company to give you oxygen. I tell you, I've done so much of that. And so I hope that this is helpful. It's just a delight to share with you. I consider it a privilege. It's like an honor to be able to share with you. And so thank you for joining me today. Hopefully I'll be back again, and I don't know how many more of these I can do. I'm fine today. I'm doing good. And I'd like to be able to help as much as I can for as long as I can. So thank you for joining me. It's just so fun to have you here. And feel free to watch it again if you need to go back and get some tips, and again, if you could, try to share it on your social media with other online groups that you're with, because the more that we can help each other, number one, the less we feel alone, and 2, there might be some tips that will make your quality of life better, because that's super important, because that's something we can do. We feel so helpless a lot of the time, but there's things we can do to make our quality of life better, and they are worth doing, and you are worth it, and I am worth it. All right, so goodbye for now. And hopefully I'll see you again. And also check my columns. I put a column up every Tuesday. And so I would love it to have you join me, and I like to answer comments, and let's do this together. All right? All right, you take care. Bye-bye.